All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of the Killer Angel Show. We got a special guest here today, Daniel. I don't know, I'm gonna mess it up. Hoffbauer.
Yes, sir.
He's an expert on the Battle of Pra Ridge and very artistic man too. He's got some great paintings. And first of all, I'm just gonna get you let him introduce himself and tell us a little bit about his background and how he got interested in the Civil War.
All right. Well, hey, my name is Dan Hoffbauer, and I live in Northwest Arkansas, in the city of Bella Vista, which is probably 10 miles away from the Pea Ridge battlefield. And I came here via Southern California, but ever since I was a little boy, always been interested in history, and the Civil War has always been one of my passions, if you will, because I think that we're still going through the after effects of the war, and I think that it's very important for people to understand what it was all about and to honor the people that fought in it on either side. I think it was a hard fought, and sometimes when people complain about how tough life is today. And I said, well, if you were in Northwest Arkansas in 1862, now that would have been tough on toast. So, count your blessings, because it could be a lot worse. So, and in moving here, I had artist block for 35 years. I didn't pick up a brush. And last year, March the 8th, of last year in 2021, 2020, I decided I'd been to the battlefield before, but I wanted to walk the battlefield on the anniversary to kind of see it in season and how it looked, and took a lot of pictures and stuff. And then a week later, COVID hit, and I thought, well, doggone it, I think I'm going to take up painting again. So my first painting was showing an Iowa battery in action just north of Elkhorn Tavern. It was a small canvas, but I was just trying to break in. And then after I was successful with that, then I took on a Confederate cavalry charge in the Foster's Farm area, the Battle of Pea Ridge, which is early on in the battle. It was a 3,000 Confederate cavalry charging down a 3-gun Union battery with some supporting cavalry, and it was pretty much a wipeout. But it was spectacular. I would imagine that's what I tried to picture. And then my last painting that I completed was showing. I called it Nightfall, which shows Elkhorn Tavern at the night of after the first day of battle, where they used it as a field hospital, and I can just imagine the horrible scenes that went on after it had been fought over during the day. So, and of course, in getting into the pictures, I had to do quite a lot of research on Pea Ridge. I had never really focused on that battle, but since I was here,
what got you into that? Was it that battle since you moved to Arkansas? Was that what got you interested in it?
Yeah, because here you are at the scene, touching, feeling, seeing. It kind of inspired me to say, well, hey, there's a great story to be told, and it was a battle with far-reaching consequences. And even though it wasn't huge in the overall scheme of things in the Civil War, there was maybe 10,000 or so on the Union side, and maybe 16,000 on the Confederate side. It was weird. It was one of the few battles in the war where the Confederates actually had numerical superiority in the battle, and it was also a kind of a study in leadership, because leadership was where the Union won the battle, was through leadership.
Now, that battle basically took Arkansas out of the war, so to speak, or is that a fair statement? I mean, didn't that battle just basically take out most resistance?
Pretty much. I mean, there was one other attempt at the end of 1862, the Battle of Prairie Grove, where the Confederates attempted to take it back. That failed, and then pretty much Northwest Arkansas was out. But with P Ridge, if the Confederates had won, it would have opened up Missouri. See, and that would have put Missouri in play for the Confederacy, and the fact
that is a very strategic battle right
yeah,
there.
it was and it was also one of the first Union victories of the war. Think about that. March of 1862, there wasn't too many in the W column for the Union. So,
I'm sorry. For that to open up Arkansas like that, was there just not many forces in Union or Confederate? Excuse me, Union forces and Confederate forces in Arkansas for that few of troops to have that such an impact to open up the state like that?
Oh yeah. There wasn't large armies out here, so that was pretty significant, and it was a very interesting battle, and there was so many.
Because a lot of us probably don't know about it. I mean, how did it unfold? It was just like a synopsis,
Well, the Union Army under General Curtis, okay, they had come down from Missouri, and P Ridge is just over the Missouri, just south of the Missouri border, and they actually had dug in a defensive position south of Elkhorn Tavern on a small stream there, and they were they were anticipating Confederate attack from the south. Okay, well, Van Dorn, who was a Confederate commander, he made a very ambitious plan. He marched around on a wide sweep to the west of Elkhorn Tavern, and then split his forces, and half of his army sent around so that they approached Elkhorn Tavern from the north, and the other half they approached Elkhorn Tavern from the west. Okay, so essentially what he did is position his army in the rear of the Union Army, and Curtis had no idea this was going on until it had happened. So the Confederates put themselves into a position to win a very dramatic victory, and but then when the fighting started, the wheels came off, and Van Dorn wasn't the best of commanders. I think he was a good regimental or brigade commander, but running an army, he kind of was the Peter principle. He was promoted to his level of incompetence, I believe, and so he kind of lost control of the battle. He was with the wing that went all the way from the north. The other wing that was marching across on a more direct route to Elkhorn Tavern was under his second in command, which was General McCullough, who had been a Texas Ranger. And he had a column of about 8,000 men, maybe 5,000 infantry or so, and 3,000 cavalry marching across. And there was a Union probe that they had gotten ideas that something was up, and they came up and there's one painting I have called Charge that shows this. They positioned, they spotted the Confederate column moving towards the east, towards Elkhorn Tavern, and so they positioned 3 guns and started shelling the column. And so in reaction to that, the Confederates sent their cavalry. It basically did a right wheel and charged, and ran down the guns, and they were a success. But they also knew that there must have been something behind that. So General McCullough made the major mistake of deciding he was going to play scout by himself. He kind of went through to check it out all alone, and he got himself shot and killed. And then looking for him, their second command also got himself shot and killed. So that entire Confederate wing was without leadership, and nobody knew where either one of these generals had gone to. So essentially, the whole thing stopped, and they never actually they got into some action there. They never made it to Elkhorn Tavern until the night, and they basically took half the Confederate Army out of action just by the confusion of lack of leadership. Okay. Then in the meantime, Van Dorn with his column, mostly infantry, were coming down and towards Elkhorn Tavern, and the Union sent up a few. They sent up an artillery battery to start shelling them. That was another painting that I did showing that, and it delayed. The Confederates became very, very cautious. They instead of advancing quickly, they advanced slowly, and eventually Curtis became aware that the entire Confederate Army was coming into his rear. So he literally did a 180-degree about face of his army, and instead of facing south, he was facing north, and then he sent troops north to meet the Confederates. And eventually they fought over the ground around Elkhorn Tavern, and the Confederates did push them back by the evening. But at that point, the battle was inconclusive. It was pretty bloody, given the amount of forces involved. But the Confederates were, of course, very confused. And then here comes the clincher. Here's what lost the battle for the Confederates, and it's not what you would think. They really weren't defeated in battle per se. During all this time, the Confederate supply train had been stopped about 10 miles west of all of this, and nobody bothered to give them orders as to where to go. In the meantime, the Union Army train, which was stationed just south of Elkhorn Tavern, now the Confederates would have hustled. They could have captured the Union Army train, and then Curtis would have been in a pickle. But there was enough delay to where Curtis sent his supply train south out of harm's way. And sometime during the night, in fact, really in the morning, Van Dorn started wondering, well, where's my supply train? Well, nobody knew. So the Confederates literally ran out of ammunition. They had no rations. They had no supplies whatsoever, and they were forced to retreat because logistics did them in. And of course, you haven't been anybody who's been in the military knows that it's logistics is what wins you battles. And the Confederates just completely lost touch and coordination with them. And Curtis was the better general there. He was able to utilize his resources and came off with a resounding win. And of course, the Confederates, when they retreated, the soldiers, they were flabbergasted. They were aghast. They thought they'd won the battle and were just going to mop up. And it turns out here they were retreating. And so it was a debacle of major proportions for them. And they blew a great opportunity to win a strategic victory there.
If the Confederates had better command and control over the situation, they could have won a major victory.
Oh my goodness, yes.
Quite possibly could have been a game changer early on, because if you are driving into Missouri, and Grant's their army in Tennessee, that's going to cause concern right there. Hey, we got a threat coming through Missouri that take this state into the Union, and who far, you've got troops there. How far can you take this right here? It could have totally slowed the advance down in Mississippi. We got something over here we got to deal with.
Sure, when the Union were coming down the rivers in Tennessee and stuff in their early 1862 campaigns, because remember, Shiloh was fought maybe a month after this battle.
Right.
Okay. If they were worried about the Confederates possibly threatening St. Louis, which was a major supply base, and literally bringing Missouri more in the war on the Confederate side, since it was a border state anyway. There was a lot of Missouri regiments that fought on both sides. Uh, that would have been, that probably would have delayed the Union advance down the Mississippi by at least a year. It would have changed the entire nature of the war in the West by basically unhinging the extreme, I guess you could say, the Union right flank, if you look at it strategically on a map. And the sad thing for the Confederates was they had themselves positioned. He caught Curtis by Van Dorn caught him by surprise. If even he had just pushed forward and captured Curtis's supply trains, he was right on his line of communication to Missouri. They would have been in a really, really tough spot. And as it turns out, the tables were turned on them through their own incompetence. And that's the sad thing for the Confederates, was that they had a great victory in their grasp, and they just let it go. And so I would say P Ridge was one of the great what ifs in the
it
Civil
almost
War.
seems like it could have been, that almost a turning point, so to speak. I mean, maybe not on, not on some of the higher levels, but definitely a small turning point. I mean, if you open up Arkansas, you're taking out, affecting the whole Trans-Mississippi Theater there.
Oh yeah,
That definitely could be seen as a turning point early on in the war.
yeah. I think P Ridge gets not enough recognition as a significant battle because of what could have happened if the Union would have lost that one. That would have been disastrous to their war plans at that time, and would have diverted a tremendous amount of Union resources into righting that situation. I'm pretty sure they could have had it righted, but it would have cost them time and troops and effort, and it would have completely changed the character of the war west of the Mississippi. I think P Ridge does not get enough credit for being a significant battle.
The first time I ever really studied on the battle, I was in one of my war classes, and they got into it, and I didn't really realize anything about it, because I think the Trans-Mississippi Theater, just gets totally ignored. And actually, I won't say too long this ago, but I was kind of surprised. I was kind of reading about different theaters, and then I read about the Pacific and the Sunbelt theaters, and I was like, whoa, wait a second, and found that kind of interesting. There are theaters that we didn't hear about. So did you consider yourself more of a Trans-Mississippi guy than the other theaters?
Well, I wasn't until I came here. Okay. I mean, before that, hey, I'd visited Shiloh. I'd visited, I never got to Gettysburg. I don't know why, but I visited the Manassas battlefields. I had my share of Civil War battlefields during my lifetime. And of course, I was always interested in Army Northern Virginia and the whole Army of Tennessee thing. And I really, I just felt like everybody else. Well, the Trans-Mississippi area was kind of like the minor leagues. But once I got here and started digging into the actualities, and then of course taking advantage of being actually here and being able to see and walk around on the battlefield. And by the way, P Ridge is a very well preserved and very well done battlefield. I mean, they've done tremendous things to make it appear very close to what it was when it was fought. And actually the same with Prairie Grove, which was another battle that was fought south of here in Arkansas. But both those battlefields are pristine. And in fact, Prairie Grove is the site of every 2 years of the largest reenactment west of the Mississippi, and they're pretty serious about their reenactment. and since it's a state park, see, of course, P Ridge is a U.S. Military park, and then they don't allow, of course, none of them allow reenactments within the boundaries. But Prairie Grove is an Arkansas state park, and they actually have reenactments right on the battlefield where it was fought, and it's pretty spectacular.
Do you I know you post for have you posted your paintings on Killer Angels or?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I post them all the time, and I've been posting them when they're in progress. You know, so I've had a lot of fun with it.
Do you sell these?
Yeah, I scan them, and you know, I've made I can make prints of them in various sizes, various prices. I have an Etsy site that Dan.
Do you have a place where people can go look and find that? Tell them where to find that at.
Yeah, it's on Etsy. It's a Dan Civil War Art. It's called, and so so every one of them I scan. I haven't decided whether I'm ever going to sell the originals or not. I'm trying to get them exhibited at the battlefields. I don't think I sell
my originals. Do you plan to do paintings on any more battles? Or?
Oh yeah. I've got a follow-on for Battle of Prairie Grove after the one I just finished, and then I'm going to get into some other skirmishes as well. And plus, there's a lot more in P Ridge. There's a lot more scenes in there I'd like to do. I'd like to end up doing a series on the battle. I could see doing another 3 or 4 on P Ridge easily, showing different moments in the battle. And you know, I want I mean, the main battles have been done and overdone, and my feeling is I'm going to do what I need to do. I think if I was to think about doing a major battle, a really major battle outside of Arkansas, I think I'd probably focus on Shiloh. Yeah, that battle always kind of, because that was the first battle in the Civil War that was of a scale that nobody had ever seen on the continent before. I mean, when you think about it, first Bull Run, Wilson's Creek, even Forts Henry and Donaldson, and then P Ridge. I mean, you know, you got 20, 30, 40,000 guys involved in it, and casualties in the thousands, but Shiloh was the first one where the casualties were in the tens of thousands, and nothing like that had ever been experienced before in American history, and people on both sides were just shocked. I mean, that's kind of I love that little thing in you know, the movie How the West Was Won.
Yeah.
Where when Spencer Tracy narrating, and he says when their little thing about Shiloh, and he says, after Shiloh, the South never smiled again, and there weren't too many smiles on the North either. I had an ancestor. I mean, I have a German background. That our family moved from Germany in the 1840s, settled in Iowa, and one of my ancestors fought in the Union Army. Actually, he was in for 3 years, one of those 3-year call-ups, and he ended up being a major. And so, you know, we have some Union Army background in the family, and I was told I had an ancestor in Custer's 7th that managed to miss the massacre by being drunk and AWOL, and he was in the stockade. So, you know, and so and it was, you know, I think that I probably, though, over studying history, I gotta tell you, I always kind of have a soft spot for the Confederate side in the way that I kind of always gravitate towards the underdog, and the what ifs, and the this and the that, and of course So I kind of always
you remember where your Killer Angels admin's from, right? So
yeah, I mean, so I mean,
you didn't catch my joke.
no,
That's it. You know who the admin of the Killer Angels is, where he's from, right?
no.
He's from Birmingham, Alabama. So
Oh, well, there you go. Yeah,
which
and
is
hey,
okay.
and so I don't think of myself as a Yankee or as a rebel, but I mean, I just uh, it, I used to, when I was young and when I was in high school, I got into war games and stuff. I think the first war game I ever got was Gettysburg, and it was just, and fighting the what if situations. Well, hey, the what ifs are more fun by saying, well, what if the side that lost won? Okay, so that's kind of like I always kind of gravitated towards
Yeah.
that aspect of it, and and
Oh,
uh,
but it's
and all the coulda, woulda, shouldas, which of course that's part of the fun of history is being able to be Monday morning quarterbacks. Saying, well, gee
yeah,
whiz, if
yeah.
if Longstreet would have done so and so, and you see all these opinions, and that's what I love about Civil War history. When I was doing the picture on the Confederate cavalry charge, and it was led by the Ninth Texas Cavalry. Okay, well, on various sites on Facebook, I mean, there was a raging controversy over which battle flag did they fly at P Ridge. There could have been any one of three. Okay, and at one time or another in the painting, I had all three in there, and I finally decided on this Van Dorn flag that I show,
Uh,
which and I've got people still just you know getting to me up one side and down the other. They say that couldn't have been possible. But I said, look, there's an eyewitness account that not only describes the flag, but they even name the flag bearer. They say that carried the standard into the battery. And I said, it could have been any of them, but I'm just going with this one. But there's never any real answer. Okay, and so Civil War history is fun because sometimes there are no absolutes, and you kind of give it your best guess sometimes, and that's what creates for lively discussions, and it's amazing when you think about it. Something that happened. What are we now? 160 years.
yeah.
And
And
people, look how passionate people are about the Civil War to this day.
I think one thing of this too is, yeah, 160 years ago, and then you sit there and go, but that was really only about 2 or 3 generations ago, because my grandfather was born in not my grandfather was born in 1930.
Mm-hmm.
His father was born in 1870.
Mm-hmm.
So you're talking about my great grandfather was born then. So my great great grandfather would have been his father was in there. So you're talking about 2 or 3. It's not that many generations separated between it. So I think that's one thing
Yeah,
to do.
yeah, it's not so. And the after effects of the Civil War are still with us. I mean, how different would this nation have been without the Civil War? I mean, you think about that, and
Well,
it's still.
an interesting thing you said that I asked a professor one time, and I never could figure out if this guy was what his views on if he was pro. Actually, I think he was more pro union. To be honest with you, now I think about it, the stuff he would say. So I asked him one time. I said, if some of the war and call, because why don't a lot of people get into calls and stuff? And we were talking in private conversation. He said, that war. It,
Hello,
I'm still here.
I think I lost you for a second.
Okay. No, I got quiet because when the phones rang. But anyway, him and him was talking. We didn't get it, because I don't want people getting into causes and stuff. And he told me, he said when they signed the Constitutional Convention, set the government up. He said once they signed that day, he said that war was destined to take place. No matter there would have been an issue that something that the war was destined to take place because of the New England Southern rivalry. And I kind of believe that. I don't know what it would have been about, but I kind of see where he was going with that on it.
Yeah, and when you think, it's funny how history repeats itself. And before the buildup of the Civil War, the whole political thing was the balance in the Senate between slave states and free states, and that when Kansas went to the north and to a free state in 1860, between that and Lincoln being elected, the South saw no political end to it that would end well for them, and they would never get a majority again or parity. Okay. And here you're talking about, fast forward to today's political thing with a 50-50 Senate and this whole, controversies over elections and things, and people saying, well, if it goes this way, then Republicans will never win another election and blah, 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 and all this and that. And I'm going like, wow, shades of the Missouri Compromise here, folks. I mean, it's so what comes around goes around in this country, and it just goes to show you how the Civil War illustrates a point of what happens when politics goes a little haywire. Okay, and of course, back in the Civil War days, people didn't. I mean, nowadays people whip out go to war with each other with attorneys. Back then, hey, you didn't like what somebody said, hey, you call them out and have a duel or whatever, or you go and call out the militia and let's start fighting. I mean, that's the way folks did things back then. And so, and I do think that the Civil War, once it started, I don't think anybody thought it would go the direction that it did. I don't think anybody thought that, but it got to the point where neither side could quit, and it was, it was bad, no matter what. So, it's just, I just think Civil War is a cautionary tale for us today.
So Dan, I know we're not going that day. We got one more battle that in the paintings we're going to talk about on your next segment. But
sure.
Is there anything that you'd like to add about this battle and this painting, or your paintings or anything? I mean, any final thoughts on it? I mean, so I think you did a great job of explaining it, and your analysis stuff has been perfect. I mean, been a really good interview here. But is there any final thoughts for this one out?
I just feel that it's it's kind of an honor to do these paintings. I wished I was a little better artist. I've never been formally trained or anything. So my mother, who my art talent came from, used to say, hey, you're primitive, so don't let them mess with your style. So it is what it is. But I just feel that trying to show people a little glimpse of what might have been, and it kind of makes it come alive. And I think it's very important that people maintain history, maintain their heritage, are aware of some of the things that went on, and the fact that it wasn't clean and easy. It was nasty and bloody, and I try to show that in my paintings to the best of my ability.
Well, great for coming from the heart. I enjoyed this today, and we'll have to have you back on real soon to do that, man.
Hey, love to anytime, and like I say, I really enjoy the conversations and the debates and the information, the sheer information that Killer Angels has. I think it's a wonderful group, and I commend everyone for for doing just a fantastic job. It's a very interesting group, and I'm glad I'm part of it.
Hey, man, we're glad to have you. And thanks for those kind words. And we'll get that back on very soon, man.
Great. Hey, I appreciate it. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.